Hi, welcome to Just Read It, our brief but spectacular book reviews on New York Times bestsellers, reviewed by spectacular authors from the Pacific Northwest. And I have with me two of those. They've been with us before, so I think we're going to have a great conversation. Suzy Vitello is, I think this is your second book now that you're just coming out, isn't it, Suzy? What's the name of the second novel?
FAULTLAND, and it is my debut adult novel, but it's actually my fourth published book.
Oh, I apologize for. Okay, so you have a website where people can go and look at this, or do we?
I do.
Go ahead.
Yes. SuzyVitello.com.
I think we can remember that. All right, Suzy, thanks very much. And now my second guest is Richard Lovett of, science fiction fame. He is an award-winning author. So, Richard, what's your book is already out. It's just been out, hasn't it?
Yes, it's called Neptune's Treasure, and it is a novel set in the outer solar system, based on an award-winning series known as the Floyd and Brittany series that appeared in Analog Science Fiction magazine over the course of a few years. And it's available on Kindle and Amazon.com.
All right. And the author we're going to put on the hot seat today is the internationally famous Edward Snowden, and his book is Permanent Record, and it's just out in paperback. It's been out hardback for about a year, so we hear from Edward from time to time from the snow pits of Russia. So I'm wondering if I could start with you, Richard. I'd like to, just let the audience know what the book is about. It's autobiographical, and a little bit of your take on it.
Well, it's Snowden's memoir, and so it's definitely autobiographical. It's kind of the story of his life from practically his birth to today, and talks about what he did and how he grew up into the person who did it. It's been. Do you want my review on it? My basic review on it right now, or?
Well, no. Just give us a little background on. Okay.
Who Snowden was? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Tell us what you think.
I'm assuming that everybody reading this knows who Edward Snowden was, but are hearing this, it's possible they don't. But he was the one who leaked the NSA spying materials some years ago, and then wound up in exile in Moscow, where he still is. And the book has been very popular. Personally, I'll be very interesting to see what Suzy says about it. I found it really hard to get through. And I think your take on it is going to depend on whether he's your hero or you hate him, in part. And if you're neutral, and I was interested in learning about him, I'm afraid I found him to be insufferably arrogant. And and he spent the whole first half of the book lecturing me about what it is to grow up as a millennial. And while I'm not a millennial, I am a running coach, among other things, and I coach millennials, and I know a lot of them. And it's like he talks a lot about learning what a computer was back when. I'm kind of impressed that people may find it a nice trip through computer nostalgia. They're younger than I am, because he does talk about things that look like I was 30 when they happened, but I remember them, and I kept wanting to say, get on with it. Mm-hmm. It does pick up momentum at the end, and we can get to that later on if you like. I mean, I thought the best part of it was when he gives voice to his girlfriend in this next to the last.
Yes. All right. Well, all right. Let's see what Suzy's take is on this.
Okay. Well, I agree with you, Richard. The arrogance in the first part of the book was a little off-putting. I if I weren't reading it for this review, I might not finish it. It might have ended up on my nightstand forever until I passed it along to somebody who might be more interested in it. But it did pick up, and the pacing picked up, and it did sort of have this thriller quality after he did what he did. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but you probably already know, right? The big takeaway for me was I really, like probably a lot of people, and he assumed that we would lump the idea of being a whistleblower and a leaker kind of in the same bucket. Like I had, you know, sort of like, oh, is he like Julian Assange? You know, and then when I really got the sort of the difference between leaking and whistleblowing, I'm just going to read a tiny little bit from the actual pages, because this really put it in perspective for me. This is on page 236. And he says, today, leaking and whistleblowing are often treated interchangeable. But to my mind, the term leaking should be used differently than it commonly is. It should be used to describe acts of disclosure done out of public interest, done not out of public interest, but out of self-interest, or in the pursuit of institutional or political aims, okay? So he differentiates himself from that because he claims that he was doing this out of the public interest. And I think I believe him. But I have to agree that, you know, as a kid and a student, he's just like, well, school is stupid, you know? And my husband and I are both educators, and we're like, okay, we run across this attitude a lot, you know, with adolescents. So I would agree with Richard.
Well, that's the essential issue and the question, not only of the book for our society, isn't it? That brings it squarely into today. With Trump saying he might give Snowden a pardon, and yet, you know, a lot of other leakers are wondering what's going to happen to them because they stayed in the country. So Snowden's problem is that if he comes back, he will be hit with a due process system that comes from treason, not simply just doing something for the good of the country. So I guess I was a little more patient with his attempting to make his best case. This book is an apology, I think, for what he did, and I think he's throwing himself on the mercy of the public, because the rules for a treasonous trial, you know, have very little rights for the accused. Richard, did that cross your mind at all? Was that anything that you took into account?
Oh, yeah.
For the book?
Oh, yes. I mean, I knew this is what he was doing. And I mean, I don't think he faces treason. I think he faces espionage or something.
Thank you. Yes.
I mean, treason is a death sentence.
With his head.
And yes, without pardon. I mean, he very much committed the crime that he would get charged with if he came back. He openly admits it. And so he's saying in the book that he had no moral alternative. I would have liked him to spend more time looking at his options on that. Now, I come at this as my PhD is in economics, and I used to be a law professor. So I come at this as a policy wonk perspective. Mm-hmm. And as a policy wonk, I think he exposed some really bad policy. He exposed some things that the NSA should not be doing. And there's not a whole bunch of disagreement in many circles over that. He spends a lot of his book explaining why what they did was wrong. And yet, if you're reading the book and you know who he is, you know what they did, and you know that this was kind of like the dynamite story. And I would have liked him to peel back a little bit more, not into the computer stuff, which he kind of wanted to do more, but into himself. What other alternatives did he consider? I was thinking about that this morning, taking a walk, that he gave himself, as portrayed here, only two alternatives: just sit by and do his thing, or leak, or whatever he wants to call it. What would have happened? What other alternatives were there? And why did he reject them? And I don't remember him even talking about them. Like, could he have been a congressperson?
Let me cut in here because there is a third alternative, which I've read so much of his books, I'm not sure. And that was, he could have gone to his superiors and said this was wrong. But he didn't, because one or two others had done that and really been axed, lost jobs and suffered repercussions. So beyond leaking, keeping your mouth shut, or reporting it to your supervisor, I don't know what the alternative would be. What's your thought on that, Susie?
Well, one point he makes throughout the book is that our technological innovation has outpaced the law by at least a generation, right? He says that kind of over and over again towards, from the middle on. And I think if we're going to really have to take a hard look at that disparity between law and technology, this is part of that conversation. And this book is part of that conversation, and therefore pretty valuable. I don't know much about the law, and I don't know what his alternatives would have been. I do feel like the dude's a little impulsive, but he's young. He is young, and he put a lot on the line. He clearly made a case for his relationship with Lindsay being really important to him. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I think I really appreciated the fact that he was making this decision because he felt like he had no other choice, that he couldn't live with himself if he just kept the secrets that he knew. Yeah,
and I will point out, as you may have read, I've been trying to read, but I don't have my glasses on. There's one of the agencies has said that has charged the NSA with wrongdoing and validated Snowden's concerns and the wrongdoing. So in that sense, what he did has been justified. So now the question is, does he come back to the United States and face the music? And I don't think he would under the Espionage Act. So as you say, Susie, he poses, or both of you said this, poses some really important questions for the American people. And in that sense, I tend to want to thank him for that. You want to bring the ball back, Richard, and respond to what I just said?
Sure. Sure. And I want to say, first of all, I agree with what Susie said, and I don't know if he had, any other alternative. The third alternative you proposed, he definitely did talk about. It was obviously one that didn't work. I just would have liked to see more discussion of that. I think in part because he spent the part of the book where he's talking about the NSA lecturing us at great length on that which anybody who followed this controversy already knew. Mm-hmm. And it picked up steam for me when he had made his decision and is talking about how to carry it out. And I start realizing this is not an easy thing. And then his decision to, I'm giving, how do we discuss this without giving too much of, the role of his girlfriend, who he clearly really cares about, and the price he imposes on her in doing this is a very interesting thing, and her reaction is very interesting. I remember there comes a point when I'm like, show some emotion, Lindsay, and oh boy, does she unload. And just right when I'm thinking that. And I think maybe I would have preferred, I think he intellectualizes a lot. Okay. And I would like to see more of what, this may be the novelist in me. I want to get inside this character's head, and he's or more inside his heart. And he's kind of guarding that a little bit. And his editors.
Let me pop in here and say, Susie, that's a very critical point, because he didn't write this book on his own. He had a mentor, somebody named Cohen. But what was your take, Susie, on what Richard has just said about the internal thing of the novel?
Right. Right. Well, interesting point. that was my question. Did he have a ghostwriter, or did he just have a helper? How much of this is his voice? How much of it's interpreted to be his voice? So those are questions I think that might have influenced how this came across and how close he got to his inner motivations as he was going on. I do feel like a guy that brilliant, and his brain is sort of in that engineering realm, maybe a little on the spectrum, and it might be unclear for him even, he might not even have the ability to really look at the nuances of his emotions in light of all of this. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure, yes, as a reader, I always want to know more about the inner workings and the reflection and the turmoil that our protagonist is going through. Like Richard, I really appreciated when he let us in on the sort of the ruse, like his Rubik's Cube thing, that was a great object to have going forward. And just the way he had to gab with the various guards and know their weaknesses and know how to banter with them. I thought that gave me a little insight that, maybe there's more going on there with nuances in psychology.
Well, we have to wrap this up, and I'm sorry, because it seems to me that the second half of our discussion here should be, what impact does this book have now? What responsibility has Snowden thrown in our laps as the readers? What now are our duties? What are we going to do with this information? So, but it is time to vote, to tell our viewers whether you think it's, especially now it's in paperback, whether it's worth the price of a take-home book. Susie, what's your opinion?
With caveats, I do recommend it. I think it's important as part of the conversation. So yes, I say yes.
Piece of history, okay, in the making.
Yes.
And Richard, how about you?
I was going to say no, but I kind of like, can I kind of go like that? It's not really an option, like neither up nor. I think that it has a lot of flaws and is a really hard read, but it does add to the history of this. I would like to read the book written by a third party who draws upon this book. So I'm being really equivocal. If forced to say it, it's like if you're a fast reader and you can get through the first half, yes, because it does pick up speed.
Okay, well, I'm not going to let either of you go. And my vote is yes. It's Americana and history, and it's living, and we need to inform ourselves. Now, before I let you go, I want you to tell me the title of your books again and where they can be purchased. And I'm going to start again with you, Susie. What's the title?
Okay. FAULTLAND is the name of my book, and it is a domestic thriller. And it comes out March 30th, and you can pre-order it now on IndieBound or Amazon just by putting in the word FAULTLAND and my name, Suzy Vitello. Thank you.
All right, Susie. And Richard, what is your contact for your book? How do we buy your book?
So my book is NEPTUNE'S TREASURE, and it is on Kindle, and it is on Amazon.com in print, and that would be where you would get it. And it's a science fiction novel set in the outer solar system.
And I wish some days, I wish I were on the other solar system. Particularly, I think today, as we are taping today on with the notice of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death, and so the events that we're talking about are so critical, and she will be missed. Susie, do you want to say anything about this loss?
Well, yeah, I felt it very, very hard, harder than I even expected to, because, frankly, this was an anticipated event, but our democracy hangs in the balance. And I just think Ruth Bader Ginsburg for everything that she did. What a champion, but I am deeply sad.
Okay, and how about you, Richard?
Yeah, I would second much of that, or all of that, actually. She was a towering figure on the Supreme Court. And I think we were a little slow to recognize how towering.
She was so short. That was
true. And I remember when I was stunned and shocked, but not, how can you be stunned, shocked, and not surprised at the same time? But I felt all those all at the same time. I know that, I mean, it was just yesterday as we're taping this when it happened. And I posted on Facebook and it said, this is the time to remember her, not for politics. Of course, we're now 18 hours later and the politics immediately started. But she was a towering figure, even if she was however tiny.
All right, Richard, thank you for that. Now, again, we are going to remember Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but I'm going to be a bit crass. Remember these authors too. They need a little TLC. So Dennis, excuse me, I don't want to have Dennis on my brain because I don't know anybody by the name of Dennis. Richard Lovett and Suzy Vitello. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you, Richard, and thank you all for coming to join us at Just Read It. Please consider subscribing. We're on about every 2 months, and I know you wouldn't want to miss our pearls of wisdom. And again, I thank both of these local artists for taking the time to be with us today, and see you next time.